The governance structure for a cooperative society has the membership at the top, being the supreme authority. And I trust that we all know that during the AGM, we exercise that right of being the supreme authority by giving directions. The decision-making organ, the main decision-making organ for a cooperative society is the supreme authority. Who is who? Us, the members. And so below there, we have the board that we elect. And then we have the staff that we have, the management. In the legal framework governing cooperative societies, there has been developments, and currently we have gone under regulation. We are being regulated by SASRA, and being regulated by SASRA, we are now having a very clear separation between the two organs. We used to call the elected officials of the cooperative society, of the Saccos, as management committee. And then we have our staff who we are still calling the management. So to have a very clear separation, the regulations refer to them as the board of directors. So we are no longer referring to our leaders that we have elected as management committee. So the board of directors and the management are in the second tier in the governance structure of a cooperative society. And then, therefore, the management committee, of course, carries out a delegated function from the board of directors, including the supervisory committee. And so, because of the role that those two organs perform, mainly the board of directors and the supervisory committee, we must be very cautious and deliberate in how we appoint people to those positions. I know, we all know the testimony that United Women has, where it has come from, sorry, and where we are, up to where we are, thank you. Where we have come from, where we are, and where we want to go. And because of those projections, it is important that we are very deliberate about the people that we put in place to direct us to whatever destination we want to go to. Now, the regulations that I've talked about are very clear that when we are appointing our board of directors, we must ensure that they meet certain criteria. They meet a certain threshold. I know we have been doing it, but we have not been doing it we have not had a document governing how we are doing it. And so in the last special general meeting, I think special general meeting, we began to do a document that will guide how we appoint people to these positions. And the regulations require that whoever is elected is supposed to fit into a certain threshold criteria, and therefore require that they do, when you are exercising your right as a member, as a supreme authority, to elect people to those positions, then you ensure that we are having fit and proper leaders for those positions to take us to the direction that we want. There is even, further to that, there is a form that those elected officials will have to fill to show that they meet that criteria. And therefore, we have this document that is supposed to govern how that process is done. The bottom line of governance, of course, is because we want to hold people to account. We want to ensure that we are meeting our aspirations, that we are meeting our objectives, and therefore, it definitely requires that we are very deliberate about all that process. So this document, I'm sure we have interacted with it, and we used it in the last AGM to vet all candidates that were aspiring to serve in our board. This document gives the guidelines. It gives the thresholds. And it is supposed to ensure that we are also fair to everyone, that we have the required skill set that is able to ensure that the board is functioning to achieve the objectives for which we have put them there to do for us. And so I will outline very briefly some parts and put emphasis in more, because each of us needs to understand what this document entails. And as you know, as part of good governance, definitely transparency is one of them. And that is why this document is being presented to us, so that we know what it entails. Now, the introduction part of this document explains that the Board of Directors developed this document, of course, with consideration of all those documents that guide how we make decisions such as this. Of course, the Constitution is there. We are supposed to elect leaders that fit the requirements of Chapter 6 of the Constitution. We know that a requirement. And we have our bylaws, which also has guidelines. We have the Cooperative Societies Act that has guidelines. And I'm now mentioning the Sacco Societies regulations of 2020. This one specifically for those SACCOs that are not doing FOSA but are still non-deposit taking, and therefore have deposits above 100 million, and other two categories that have been specified. So with those considerations, the objective of this policy is to ensure integrity, transparency, and fairness in the process of society elections. The scope, it provides guidelines for the election of the two categories of leaders, the Board of Directors and the Supervisory Committee, which is the oversight organ of the society. We are talking about the vetting and nomination committee because if we have a threshold, if we have a criteria, then definitely there has to be some sitting that is able to ensure that all candidates are meeting that threshold that has been set. And therefore, there shall be a vetting and nomination committee that will comprise 3 members. We understand normally for committees an odd number is recommended for purposes of decision making so that we avoid ties. And therefore, there shall be 3 members. The chair of this committee will be a representative of the Commissioner of Cooperative Development. The secretary will be the CEO to provide the secretariat services, the information that we will need, because that is where the records are. There shall be a member selected from the United Women Sacco panel of lawyers who is not a member of the board. This is supposed to provide, this is for provision of a neutral position. Now, the mandate of the Vetting and Nomination Committee shall include the following. 1, to review and propose the remuneration of board members. Remember that we are regulated, and therefore there are also structures and guidelines that we shall get on this, because again, we also know there's a limitation of the number of sittings for one, and our audited accounts are definitely approved by the regulator. And therefore, this one has to be done within those thresholds, not forgetting that the membership also have a right to exercise when approving the estimates that are presented at the AGM. Number 2, to monitor the size and the composition of the committees. The law provides that we can have a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 9. And therefore, at any one particular time, this may be reviewed according to the prevailing situation. We may have a smaller one or a bigger committee. There is also a window for extending it beyond 9 if there is need. However, this requires the approval of the commissioner. The commissioner can waive that requirement if there is need, which I doubt has been exercised by societies previously, maybe just 1 or 2 here and there. Number 3, ensure that there are no skill gaps in the committees during the vetting process. And we have talked about our goals as an organization to grow. Definitely, we have reached a level where there's a lot of technical decisions, high-level decisions that need to be made in that level of decision making, and therefore a lot of skills are required. Number 4, there's overseeing the election and succession plan. Succession is very critical in any organization, and we have to be very deliberate with this one. So this committee is tasked with the responsibility of observing the status and also preparing for succession when that need arises, so that we do not find ourselves in a crisis or have a vacuum at any one time. We have a seamless transition as much as possible. Number 5, The committee also receives nomination forms and the supporting documents to ensure that we are meeting the threshold that has been set. It also ensures that nominees are in compliance with the vacancy requirements. Those are the criteria that we have outlined as the requirements for anyone seeking a position in the leadership of the Sacco. Number 7, compile a report on the nomination process before the AGM. So prior to the AGM, these processes are done preparing for the election, and a report is presented at the AGM at any particular time. Number 8 is to issue nomination certificates to the candidates who are qualified for presentation to the AGM. Issue election certificates to duly elected members at an AGM or special general meeting. The vetting criteria we have mentioned is guided by a number of other legislation and provisions, the bylaws, the constitution, the acts, and the regulations of 2020. So on membership, what we have tailor-made for ourselves here is that a member must have been an active member for a continuous period of 3 years before the AGM. This ensures that we know whoever is presenting themselves to be a leader at any particular time. Having been there for quite a period, we are able to know you, your character, and a few other things. And you have also shown the commitment to walk this journey, and therefore that is an indication of a person that we can entrust with the responsibility to be custodian of our investment. Then you must also hold deposits of 500,000, a minimum of 500,000, and shares of 10,000. The only caution about this one I normally like to give is that this is a journey. Where we are now is a journey that was begun from some place, and we have got where we are. And therefore, even when we give this requirement, we expect that it has been a journey for you to walk to that level. And therefore, you will not wake up in the morning and we know we have the AGM in a week's time or in a month's time and bring your 500,000 and therefore qualify to be a leader. And that is why the vetting committee has that sitting, to look at other things. Even though you have that minimum threshold, does it still qualify you against all other issues that we are looking at for you to be a member, to be a leader? Number 3, that you should not be having any arrears owing to the Sacco. So if you have a loan, then we expect that your loan is up to date, that you have not fallen into arrears with your obligations to the society. Number 4, that you should not be a committee member or board member of another cooperative society. And this one is because of commitment. Leadership in a cooperative society, even though we say is voluntary and sometimes looks like something that we can do as an extra activity or a side responsibility. Of course, many of us are working. It entails a lot and requires a lot of commitment. And therefore, if you had another responsibility elsewhere, definitely one will be compromised. So we expect that you will be available and committed. And therefore, there's this requirement that you should not be an official in another cooperative society. Number 2, on integrity, which is very key, that you must declare your existing and potential conflicts of interest with the society. And this one is good practice in any organization. Number 2, that you must not be an employee of the society. This is still supported by the other documents that we are talking about, that particularly the act, that you should not be earning a salary if you are an official, a board, a director of a cooperative society. Then you should not be earning a salary. There is only provision for allowances. Therefore, you must not be employed by the society. Number 3, that you should not have been adversely mentioned in a report for mismanagement of public funds or corrupt practices. I think this one is self-explanatory. We are trusting you to be custodian of our investment, and therefore your history matters to us. So the blemishes will not really do well, and we will therefore avoid them as much as possible. Number 4, has not been convicted of any offense involving dishonesty, and then has not been convicted of any offense under the Cooperative Societies Act. And these include misappropriation, and therefore probably you have been surcharged in a court of law to compensate a society for actions that you committed while you were in another cooperative organization. Number 6, should not be a person against whom any amount of money is due under a decree, decision, or order, or is pending recovery under the Cooperative Act. And here now we are talking about those people that Mr. Kidinja has talked about. They have not really the 5 that he was talking about. These ones are even debts that have gone to a higher level, and so you owe in many places, and you have been those like the cases that are in CRB. Such cases we will not encourage. Number 7, that has not been removed from public office on disciplinary ground, has not been listed by CRB, and conforms to the standards in Chapter 6 of the Constitution. So those areas cover the integrity part of the requirements of anyone seeking to be a leader. Availability, we have mentioned it elsewhere, but this one is very deliberate and therefore has been presented as a standalone item on this policy, that you should have sufficient time and be available to devote to the affairs of the society. Number 4, the age, education, and experience. I don't know if those who are 20, just above 18 will put up their arms in protest, but we also know that a lot of wisdom comes with age, isn't it? Is it true or not? Do we have members younger than 30? Yeah? Do we have them present here? Okay. Yes. So this provision requires that you need to be at least 30 years of age, because we look at our membership and we see the membership that we are. I don't know. The younger me myself, I know there are things probably when you are younger you will not be able to handle. The other day we were holding elections in a cooperative society, and the proposal of the outgoing chair was that we elect a very young member, and the members were in protest because the membership is aged, most of the membership, and they were like, no, she will not understand us. We want someone who will understand where we are coming from. So I think this also takes into consideration that there is some maturity that comes with age, and therefore we allow our younger ones to grow and mature and to that level. So they need to be at least 30 years of age for you to be able to hold a position. Number B, that you must have attained at least a bachelor's degree education. And this one I also need to give a caution that when we do this is because we have profiled our membership. The commissioner is very, of course, the legal provisions are very clear that we will not want to compromise or deny any member or disadvantage a member because on the basis of their education. And therefore, if this requirement is given with an assurance that most of us have met this threshold and that it will not disadvantage a majority of the membership, then that is allowable. And this we have done. We have profiled our membership and know that this is a fair level, a bachelor's degree education. Number C is that one needs to have had at least some work experience of about 5 years or in a work environment. you realize that among the duties that the board of directors do, your Sacco has employees, is to direct the operations of the society, and there is a workforce that is under them. They make decisions, HR decisions and all that, and therefore we have that requirement that they should have at least some work experience. Other requirements, these are very general, that you should be of sound mind. Number 2, that you should not be a person who lends money on your own account. We are in the business of lending money, and therefore we will not want a member who has a lending business on the side to be in leadership, because that is a clear indication of conflict of interest. So you should not be lending money on your own account. The Shiloh na kadhalika should not be in competing business with the society, and that just puts emphasis on the lending on account, on one's own account. Number 4, should not be a person with undischarged bankruptcy. And this one is because the society has an image to protect. So we will not have someone who is all over the media anadaiwa madeni ambayo amekataa kulipa. And there are many of these things. We are sometimes employers, and you find an employer has a Sacco within the organization, and they are not remitting the savings. So if we have that kind of person as a leader, then you see the moral authority to even ensure or even ask anyone or hold anyone to account in such cases is compromised. Now, the nomination process, is a process for nomination, and this is very important that we understand what the process is. 1, the vacancies will be communicated during the last quarter of the financial year ahead of the AGM. That provides sufficient time for you who is interested to submit your application and prepare any document that will be required. Number 2, all members seeking nomination for elections shall fill in the nomination form. There will be a nomination form to be filled, and this form is signed by a proposer and a seconder, both who should be active members of the society. Number 3, the forms shall be sent to the email address given, you know the email address, so that will be provided, or hand delivered to the society office by the closing date as communicated by the vetting and nomination committee. The emphasis is on when that submission needs to be done. The nomination forms sent by email will be acknowledged through the same email address within 24 hours of receipt. Forms that are hand-delivered to the society office should be forwarded with a copy, where upon receipt will be acknowledged by way of a signature and the society official's stamp. Upon receiving these nomination forms, the vetting nomination committee shall invite the successful applicants to appear before it within 14 days of the closing date for receiving nominations. This is also very important, because we will want to be sure we know who we are dealing with. And therefore, and also it gives an opportunity for us to get from you your vision, what your vision as a leader is, if it goes along with what we want to achieve as a cooperative society. Nominees appearing before the committee shall be required to bring along original academic certificates and any other documents requested. If you are unsuccessful, you will be notified within 14 days of closure of receiving those nominations, and the names of the successful nominees will be circulated to members 2 weeks prior to the AGM. This will allow members to know the candidates that they will be making a decision to elect, and therefore even have time to seek further information there. And therefore, when we go to the AGM, when we are making the decision, we are making an informed decision. Number 9, successful candidates will be issued with the certificate that we mentioned, duly signed by the chairperson and secretary of the vetting and nomination committee. Then this brings us to the actual elections, and the process is as follows. We shall be holding the elections at the AGM, as we have been doing, and this is normally the last agenda, and this allows us to give attention to all the other items that we are supposed to discuss in an AGM, and therefore conclude with that election as the last item of the day. The nominees or their representatives shall present their nomination certificates issued to them previously to the returning officer. Only members present in the AGM or SGM shall participate in the voting. This means that you cannot vote by proxy. You cannot send your votes by SMS or any other means, or email or anything. You will need to be present for you to participate in the voting. Each member shall have one vote, only one vote, and this again, this is underpinned by the principles of cooperative societies, the democratic member control, that each member only has one vote. A nominee can be voted in absentia. So if you are a candidate and you are not present in the particular general meeting that is holding the election, then you can still be voted for. Number 6, the election shall be by secret ballot or by show of hands, as shall be decided by the majority in that particular AGM. So when we get to that time, the members will decide whether we want to do show of hands or whether we do secret ballot. Of course, for elections and at the level that we have come, the secret ballot is a better way of doing elections. But all the same, the members have the decision to have the mandate to make that decision, whether they will do secret ballot or show of hands. Number 7, the returning officer shall announce the candidate who has the highest votes in the elections as duly elected and issue to them certificates. Each duly elected member shall hold office for a period as prescribed in the society bylaws and also governed by the other legal provisions, the Act and the rules. After the elections, a number of things will be done and have been done previously. That the chair of the vetting committee will preside over the reconstitution of the committees within 7 days of elections. This we have always done, and it is still the same thing that we shall do. Duly elected person shall have an induction meeting whose agenda shall include the calendar of meetings and other requirements for leadership. As a requirement of the Cooperative Societies Act, within 14 days, any elected official will be expected to file an indemnity indemnifying the Sacco against any losses occasioned by negligence or misappropriation. Number 2, that within 30 days, we expect that those leaders will also declare their wealth as a governance also measure. Then finally, if you fail to submit this wealth declaration and the indemnity within the requisite period, then you shall not participate in subsequent meetings, of course, because you have not complied with the requirements of the law. Number 6, cessation of office of a board member. There are a number of ways that one can leave office. 1, voluntary, where you may opt as an elected board member or director to resign from the society, or the one where you have withdrawn your membership. If you withdraw your membership, automatically you lose your position, and therefore we have a vacancy occasioned by you ceasing to hold that position. In voluntary cessation, the vetting committee shall recommend to the AGM the removal of a board member in the following instances. Failing to attend 3 consecutive meetings without reasonable ground. This one comes from our bylaws. It is a provision that is there. We are only now bringing it to this policy. That is our election policy, so we borrow it from there. We have just lifted it. Number 2 is declared bankrupt by a court of law. Number 3, if a board member is in loan arrears for a period of 3 months. Again, this also is drawn from the cooperative rules, and 6 months, and the bylaws. Number 2, if you're in breach of the bylaws, any of the provisions, then of course you do not qualify to continue holding a position. If you're in breach of the vetting criteria provided in this election policy. And here we are talking about situations that may even arise after we have done the vetting. You've been vetted, we have held elections, and then along the way, for instance, you become a defaulter. Then at that point, you have fallen below the threshold set as the vetting criteria, and therefore you lose your position. Breach of the policy, any person who is in breach of this vetting policy shall be charged as per the Cooperative Societies Act and society bylaws. Any member who notices a breach of the policy before or during the AGM should notify the returning officer, who is the representative of the commissioner, immediately, and currently the county director for cooperatives. Number 8, failure to hold elections. If for any reason no elections take place, existing committees will continue in office until the elections are conducted in accordance with the bylaws. Of course, this will be with the prior information and authorization of the commissioner's office. And Number 9, policy provisions. This policy shall be reviewed periodically and may be amended as conditions warrant. As we grow, of course, some of the requirements may need to be reviewed, maybe on the minimum saving deposits, minimum share capital. So those areas are bound to be reviewed as need arises. Amendments to this policy may be recommended by the CEO of the board as necessary, based, of course, on the prevailing circumstances and approved by the board, provided the changes in no way affect the substance or intent of this policy. There is an attachment of the nomination form that outlines the areas that we'd want to put down, the professional qualifications and the other general information about a leader, a candidate. One of the rights that a member has is the right to information, and that is why we are here today. A right to information, and therefore through education, the society ensures that you have all the information you require to make any decision. The right to information, of course, is also limited. It has a boundary. And the reason I say this is because we have the structure of governance of a cooperative society. The supreme authority, the membership, is at the top. We have the board of directors, and we have the supervisory committee, and then we have the management. The supervisory committee is the oversight committee for the membership. So because we can all not access all information about the society, the oversight committee does that on our behalf. So this information is, as much as you are a member, you will not ask for. For instance, I will not ask for personal information about another member. What has member A saved? What is member X's loan? That is information that if I will seek them, you will be going outside our boundaries. So we exercise the rights, but then with limitations where applicable. And also we exercise that right responsibly. A member also has a right to attend the AGM. By virtue of being a member, any meeting of the cooperative society, you are entitled to attend and also give your views in those meetings. And therefore, even though there's a provision that as long as there's quorum for a meeting, the business of the meeting will continue and all of us will be bound by that, we emphasize that you have a responsibility to attend those general meetings so that you are a part of the decision making. You have a right to vote and to be voted for, and that is what we have talked about as we were going through the election policy. Every member has a right to participate in this process. Number 3, you have a right to enjoy the services and products offered. All the products that are offered by the Sacco are supposed to be enjoyed by every member as long as you meet the minimum threshold that is set for those particular products and services. Number 4, you also have a right to have access to the records of the society, and I've mentioned here, part of it is done on your behalf by the supervisory committee because it may not be practical for each and every member to access all that information. Number 5, you have a right to appoint your nominee and also make changes when that is necessary. The nominee is the person you appoint to take over in your absence. And this is critical because if that is not done at the right time, therefore it puts the society at, of course, not even the society alone, even your people at an awkward position because they are not able to access the benefits that they will have accessed if you had done the declaration in good time. So the changes are also very important, and we are reminded to keep reviewing when necessary. When the status changes, then you review the details as applicable. Children, as more children come in, you add them. Change of status in any way, you add. You get married, you add. You make changes as appropriate. Number 6, you also have a right to join if you meet the threshold that has been set for membership, and also a right to withdraw when you feel you need to withdraw. This is also in line with the principle of open and voluntary membership of a cooperative society. You join voluntarily, you can exist voluntarily as you wish. Number 7, you have a right to, among other things, during the AGM, participate in the decision making through making resolutions such as 1, fixing the maximum borrowing powers, fixing the indemnity amount for the office bearers, that is the board of directors, participate in the appointment of the society auditors, guided by the board, participate in appointment of the society bankers so that you know where your money is placed, and also a right to share in the surpluses of the society. You have a right to receive education and training. This is also a very important principle of the cooperatives, education and training, that you are able to get all the relevant information like the ones that we are getting so that you are able to grow yourself, to develop yourself. Because in as much as we will want to give loans as much as we can and generate as much income as we want as an organization, it is also important to us that you as an individual, you have been able to grow yourself. In the absence of education, like what has been presented to us today, this may not be possible. And therefore, we appreciate that the society has seen it very important that we do this, we have this forum so that members are informed and that we are also working together because we understand the direction we are going to together. Number 8, you have a right to give proposals on the best way forward. Decisions are, however, made on the basis of the democratic member control, whereby we shall take what the majority of members will agree on, but you have a right to give your proposal. While we have rights, we also have obligations, and one of them is to uphold and comply with the legislation that is in place. And this, of course, we have the Cooperative Societies Act, we have the regulations that we are now talking about because we have gone under regulation. We have our bylaws and we have these other policies that we are presenting, including the election policy. So as a member, you have a responsibility and an obligation to uphold and comply with these provisions. Number 2, you have an obligation to be loyal to the society. Mr. Githinji talked about borrowing. He said, where should you borrow? Did he tell us where we need to borrow from? He said we should borrow from United Women. Of course, this is our business. And the uniqueness of the cooperative model is that the owner of the business is also the customer. So you own the business and you're still the customer. And if you were to buy from the neighbor's shop and you have your own shop, would it make sense? Okay. Will it make sense for you to buy from another shop? Would it also make sense that we are not able to, for instance, we are not able to sell what we have? You have a shop and you do not have anything to sell in that shop, and you have to go. I've seen, I don't know if it happens, in my village, someone has a shop and they're selling milk. They have 5 packets of milk. So anauza maziwa yake 5, ikifika saa 5 maziwa imeisha. So they go to the next shop to get milk to buy. Would it make sense? No. So we need to be loyal to our society, patronize our products, and we also have an obligation, the main obligation that Githinji also added a verse to, that only the wicked borrow and do not repay. You have an obligation to repay your loans. You have an obligation to make your monthly savings, and you have a very key responsibility and obligation to elect responsible office bearers. Number 7, you have an obligation to share in the debts of the society and to safeguard the assets of the society while participating in decision-making during the AGM. You also have a very, very critical responsibility and obligation to be a good ambassador of your own Sacco. United Women is because of what you are able to, you are selling outside there. So you have a responsibility to be an ambassador of your Sacco because you are the owner of this business. So definitely we'd expect you to be talking good and only good about your cooperative society. And I think that is basically the responsibilities that you have as a member and your rights as a member. Just caution is that we remember that we cannot have rights without obligations. The obligations part of it is also very critical, and we need to ensure that we are abiding with it because it is what gets us to where we are.